Okay. That should be that. Yep. Foundation, development, update. Make sure everything runs and builds. Need to go to here. Okay, Cadona's disabled. Unit tests. Okay. Let's go delete some branches. Task groundwork. Delete. Foundation. Delete. Okay. Let's get that running. And let's get this running. And then we'll start to discuss what happens today. Not going to do much to that. Let's try the full stack. That might help a little bit more. So as this project goes further forward, I start to see all the little side projects or side quests that come around. One Lane, thank you very much for 7 months. I appreciate that. Good morning. Hope you are well. That is very much appreciated. Yeah, I was just starting to say that as this project grows in size and scale, I start to realize all the little side projects that I'd like to do, all the little side quests of tooling, of oh, we could add this feature, we could add that feature. Oh, there's more. Thank you. There's more and more things that I could be doing that I can't do because I don't have the bandwidth, and it's starting to make me realize, this project has got to a point now where it is so big that if this was a real project, if this was a real product right this second, this could accelerate in all manner of directions without a key vision. What I'm saying there is basically, let's say that I've built a company and I now have 2 or 3 developers working on this project, and I have someone dealing with customers and taking requests from customers because we want to figure out what's working, what's not, etc. Keeping that core vision in place now gets a little harder. An interpretation of a requirement here, or a customer requiring something and that requirement not being run through that core, message, core vision of the application, could change the way the application works. It could change all sorts. And there's ever increasing loads of work from this, right? There's just more and more and more things possible, and more directions. The reason I'm bringing that up is just it's I realize that um what's the matter, Loke? You've got the door. What do you need? What do you need? What do you need? You can't come sit with me now. No, you can't come and sit with me. I've got to do work. I'm working. I'm working, buddy. It just looks like I'm talking to myself there because you're not even on camera. What's the matter? You're a cookie? Um, I'll try and finish that thought. So there's things you know, there's things you learn through doing software development, the things you come to appreciate, and challenges you face along the way. Just not going to go away. Oh. And you understand so much, but then now trying to build a product, trying to align an initial vision with what has happened as I've developed and realized some of those things along the way. Because again, that's agile, right? The agile way is to not it's to plan, but be prepared and a bit able to change when things don't quite work. And the reason I'm bringing this up is I'm kind of thinking through this process. So last night I spent a bit of time adding a few requirements around promoting a planning item to developer tasks. So if I was a product manager right now, right, this is roughly what I'd be asking for. As a developer, the requirements out in the planning component of the system do not align to how the software breaks down. If we try and fit the software development into the requirements, we may miss components of the system or misunderstand the technical needs. Taking the requirements as part of the developer discussion and grooming and creating the relevant tasks from them will allow us to create technical tasks that align with developer effort more accurately. Tasks created from a planning item requirement will be tracked against the requirement. So again, we want a planning wizard screen as a product manager. When I'm confident the requirements have laid out are in place for developers to work from, we should be able to produce the tasks from given requirements. I should be able to navigate to a screen that will list the requirements for the given story. In the wizard screen, when I click on a requirement, a button should enable allowing me to add a task for that requirement. I should be able to add a title and a description. When I click add, the task should be added on the screen as part of a list. And again, some of this stuff would be better defined. It would have UI, UX and stuff. I don't have that time nor ability to be able to create those things effectively right this second. I should be able to see the title of the planning item that the task is associated with. When I view a task, I should be able to see the content of the requirement driving the task. So I started going through these things, and it made me realize about all the little things that I might want to know. Like, do I want to assign it to a user now? Is that something I need to worry about now? Do I want to do pointing now? Is that something I care about? Showing the progress of the things. Well, I wanted to do that, but hold on, that's a lot of work here. And this alone will take a little bit of time. But these independently, these independently do add value. Being able to see the actual, well, these two kind of go together as adding value, but this one definitely adds value. But it can't be done before this. So I was like, oh, well, what about ordering? What about priorities? What about this? What about that? I'm like, oh, there's things that you start to realize about what you're doing and what you're missing. And it is kind of why I decided to build tasks as lightly as I did and not overthink them to begin with, because I kind of knew some of this was going to come. But it's made me think more and more deeply about what does it mean to add tasks? And how are these going to relate, and what do I need to know about what when? And from a reporting perspective, there's all sorts of other stuff as well. So yesterday after stream, I did go in and I built out the task backlog. So you can click on one of these, you can see the actual task. There's nothing more, nothing less. Who it's created by, when it was added, There we go. We just have the task backlog. But now I have that challenge of this. What do I do? How do I do things? What do I need? So immediately I have, well, I'm missing the requirement of a task, right? How does it associate a requirement to a task? Um, does it have a source identifier in a source? Does it, a requirement could come from a task could come from a ticket in the end as well. Do I plan for that now? Do I write it what it's doing now, knowing full well I do want that to be something else? And then like data migration, there's all sorts of other challenges that come from this, and um, my brain's running away with all the options. So, but it does beg the question: if this was already a product, if I was building, like if I'd released this and I had another couple of developers working with me doing this software right this second, how do I keep an eye on that vision when now I'm not sure that that vision wasn't just a seed of an idea that now is being opened by the potential of what I'm doing. Um, and I hope this makes sense. I hope this isn't the ramblings of a madman. Um, but I'm trying to share the purpose of the stream. The purpose of me writing this software on stream is to show my thoughts, my practices, my patterns, and discuss how they differ to other people. To discuss things I can solve, things I do solve, not can, things I do solve, and things I don't. It does make sense. I really do like the idea of having the requirements with a task like this. It makes sense to me. And I think I'm getting to the point where I actually can show what I was thinking about originally when I started to develop this idea. Because don't forget, this all started from a single phrase of pass the ball. And what I realized was from that little seed, the reality is that a requirement can sometimes have many aspects to it. So if there was a DevOps aspect to this piece, we could create the DevOps aspect. But that's the other thing I got into. Task requirements, like A requires B, B requires D, etc. So we have to take one before the other. There's going to get into that point where we're going to need to know where something else is. Um, so yeah, that's going to be a challenge unto itself. But also then I got into thinking of this, well, if I start to show a bar here, that bar can't just show in progress, done. It has to show it has to show way more information than that. So maybe the bar isn't the idea there. Maybe there's some sort of hover that shows like you know, planning items, planning item tasks in progress, in backlog, in progress, in backlog, in progress, completed, or blocked by, so my brain's running away with all the actual, how do I capture those things? How do I develop those things? How do I get to that point? So I think tasks do start to make a bit more sense because again, this is a requirement and visually this will show us one screen, but to get to that screen might require a lot more engineering. Um, this one, creating tasks for a requirement. Well, there's going to be different APIs, there's going to be different components, there's going to be views, there's going to be all sorts of information needed. So the tasks there might break down differently, right? So, but that's one requirement that will yield. So this is so suppose what I'm really doing is I'm separating functional and non-functional requirements. And I find, um, Amadou, thank you very much for the raid again. Welcome in. I hope you are well. And correct me, I've now said Lambadoo and Lamadoo. So if I'm mispronouncing your name, please let me know. How's your work? Work is going, we're doing good. We are starting to build out the requirements screen. Uh we yesterday we were working on the task stuff, so this is actually the tasks. Um been cloned. Well, what were you working on today? Um so yeah, the idea being that the planning items as I give you time for that. What we're going to do from here is these requirements are going to spawn um tasks. So these tasks that we see over here in the task system are going to get generated from those requirements. So yeah, that's one of those. Rewriting an API for guy. Nice. Nice. How'd that go? So yeah, you just joined me as I was kind of um rambling, I suppose, about the possibilities that I have with this and the things that I want to do and trying to stay on vision and figuring out what's needed at any given stage. So what I want to do is capture, I want to be able to see the progress. So as a product manager, and this will actually highlight another problem. I want to see task progress against requirements. So this is actually probably a very perfect example of how a requirement can seem very simple, but actually has a lot more technical implications. Um, so yeah, Mojo, good morning. Hope you are well. So when as a product manager, when I'm looking at a planning item, I would like to see the total progress made of tasks within. Um, so we're gonna put that off for a couple of weeks because something tells me I might be on this piece for a little while. All right. So this is planning and UI. So no, that's not loaded yet. To fix that problem at some point. So that would be if we go to tasks, go to dashboard. Um, um, this gives me time as well. So you see how that doesn't have a created by? That's because that has no user yet. What's the matter, buddy? You go outside or you want breakfast? Um, so yeah, now I can click it because it's actually gone through the system. It's now in the view data and I can load the view up. So I'll be right back. I'm just going to let Loki out and get him some breakfast. Right back. Okay, I'm not going to mess around with headphones because the dog's going to want something else in a minute. Okay, so why does this highlight a problem? So to the product manager, if I click on this one, right, showing an indicator here is a very simple thing. It is a bar, or it is just an indicator to say 5 of these tasks are in the backlog, 2 of these tasks are started, or whatever. And maybe they want to show it on the actual thing, so there's 12 tasks or whatever. They want to show status. So to them, that might seem like a simple thing, right? Well, so from a planning perspective, the first question you ask is, what is status? Because we haven't got status. So what drives the need for status? Well, this drives the need for status technically, right? Task progress is a status of in backlog, in progress, in completed. And realistically, that's all they care about. Like, is it completed? Maybe we do want to introduce delivered as a concept, but um, that might be for later. I'm not sure. Maybe we can mark something as delivered so we can know. But it does bring up, like, from a product perspective, and this is I've seen this do this many times, right? The actual ability to have the status is a technical requirement of this overall requirement, but the system doesn't have value like unless there's a use for that. So we end up in a world of, and I've ended up in a world of many times where it's like, well, hold on, a story's not going to be technical, so what we can't develop a technical story. So why do we put it in this, and it gets lost or gets missed because we're not focused on the technical pieces when we need to focus on the technical pieces because we're trying to align with that invest acronym and yeah. So to me, these are still independent essentially. Let me go back to the acronym. I know it's up here somewhere. I know you're here somewhere. Invest. Independent, negotiable, valuable, estimable, small, testable. So I'm not necessarily breaking away from this. I'm just breaking this up into a couple of pieces and allowing the product team to kind of describe the product they want without worrying too much about the breakdown. Then these things can join together how they want. So it's still independent, right? Promote planning to develop a task is still an independent thing. As a product manager, I want to see task progress against requirements. It's still an independent thing. They both have value. They're both negotiable. What does it include, etc. The only thing it isn't is small, right? Because the small part comes from the tasks that are generated by this, and each one of them is independent, negotiable, right? We can negotiate how it's done, why it's done, etc. So, and I'm not trying to stretch that. I'm not trying to make sure that I just kind of fit in that thing. I was saying it's still kind of line, and it's just another example of I can make it sound like it does, right? Um, so yeah. Um, so this one to achieve this. Oh, you okay? You okay, bud? Yeah. Go outside if you want. You can go outside. Don't sit there crying. I can't do that. I don't know what you do, what you need. You're not coming sitting on me, no. So to do this one, my requirement might be one more thing. My requirement might be on the top of the planning item. See overall progress on top of planning item. On the top bar of the planning item, I should see hey, is someone taking the garbage can out? Relax. You're all good. See, it's neighbors. I should see 3 numbers representing backlog, in progress, done. I'm not going to introduce delivered yet. I think that can be for a later discussion. I don't think that it harms anything. We can always come back around on this afterwards. Okay, so there's our first requirement. See tasks, progress against requirements. At the top of a requirement, I should see this, see 3 numbers as above. Hey, no. We don't need to be barking, do we? Or crying. You're not coming sitting on it. No. I know, bud. Come sit down. Come on. You okay? Come here. Come here. Come here. You can't sit there crying at me and just sit looking at me like I'm an idiot. What do you want? You've had food. You've had water. You've got outside. What else do you need? Yeah, we'll clean that ear. His sister likes to lick his ears and he gets an ear infection. Okay. So, hey, no, enough. I know. Okay, be right back. Okay. It's gonna be one of them days. Okay, so again, the problem here is we don't have the concept of status. And we'd have the same problem if we were using something like Jira, because we would say, oh, well, it's a technical requirement, but it's a requirement, but we need to change quite a lot of the system. We need to add in a concept, we need to add data, etc. And this is why I think the tasks work. So right now, we can work on this one. But then we're going to have to quickly turn around and work on this, and it's going to come with more requirements. But I don't want to lose track of that, right? And again, if you're new to the stream, if you're interested in what I'm doing, if you have any questions, thoughts, opinions, please feel free to share. This is an area specifically for you as developers. This is a problem I see all the time, and I'm trying to solve. But I'm also open to a lot of input and thoughts. And I'm not trying to, again, I'm not trying to idea farm here. I do have a lot of ideas on how this should work. But again, are there things you see in that make this difficult? Are there things that you see that I'm maybe not catching the point of? Or, am I just overcomplicating a process that's already complicated? I'd like to know how you feel about things. So what I'm going to do is, let's see if it manages this actually. We're going to go into tasks. We're going to add tasks. So as a product manager, when I'm confident the requirements I've laid out are in place for developers to work from, we should be able to produce a task from given requirements. I should be able to navigate to a screen that will list all the requirements for the given story. So create tasks wizard. Create tasks wizard screen. How do you get through? How does that message get through? I don't get that. Like, Twitch hasn't figured that out yet. So create a new screen. Oh, good. Oh, good. Load requirements for given planning item PI. Display list of requirements. So again, we get into, we could have one task per requirement. We could have many tasks per requirement, but we don't have that limitation. That's what I'm focusing on. It could be a pure one-to-one, depending on how this is written, right? It could be simply transfer across, make it a task. And maybe that's something we do. Maybe we just say, okay, this is an actual task. This is a task. Okay, this one requires more. In the wizard screen, when I click on a requirement, a button should allow me to add a task for that requirement. I should be able to add a title and a description. When I click add, the task should be added on the screen as part of a list. So let's say, let's talk about the usability of the screen. You might want to navigate away. You might want to go back to it. You might want to pick it up afterwards. So we could achieve this, but then QA comes along, navigates away, and then comes back to the wizard afterwards. And what they expect is to click on a requirement and have it load the list of tasks that we've previously worked on. But again, because of the way the system is built, that might not be, this is quite a lot of work. So for this requirement, creating a screen and showing a list of requirements, right? Creating a screen, load requirements for given PI, display list of requirements. So we do have one problem. Right now we don't have, well, right now we load requirements as part of the planning items. So we technically have that. We don't need to make a separate API call. We can just load the planning item and get its requirements. Display the list of requirements. That's fine. But to come back to, so this one is a relatively simple one task to one requirement. This one, well, we need the screen. We need the API to associate. So we need to modify the API in the backend. We need to modify the consumer and then update the GraphQL component to pull in yeah, we need to modify the consumer and the view. So there is way more involved than just the UI here. And also we're not loading the tasks as part of this, right? So so yeah, the point is there's lots more going on there than just yeah. Create add task. Hey Delta, how you doing? For requirement. When clicking when adding a requirement, adding a task, we give a requirement. Update API to capture. And right now we're going to go with requirement identifier. We're not going to go with source identifier. I'm not going to generalize it. I'm going to keep it as a requirement identifier again because we don't have tickets or anything like that yet. So I'm not going to panic about that. We can worry about that change later. So create form. PCs of stories. Card conversation confirmation. Make a store card that answers the placeholder of a conversation about the feature. Prime itself is communicated from customer to program through conversation, exchange of thoughts, confirmation. Yep. If only. Nice. Is that actually how does your workflow? I believe that article also goes into not overly relying on requirements written in tools like Jira. Interesting. And what problems did you find with it? It's a garbage can. Relax. It's okay. Good boy. You're a good guard dog. Good boy. So I'm genuinely interested in people's workflows because yeah, that's um so yesterday I kind of went through um and added the requirements for this piece, right? The promote the planning items to develop a task sort of idea. Is that to promote planning requirements. So the requirements are defined in one way, and and then yielding those actual tasks. Well, I'm kind of going through and tasking it out essentially right this second. And there's things like, again, this one is a one-to-one. It's a new screen with a list. That's not too terrible. But when you get to here, there's a lot more involved in doing this, and there's some implicit behavior. Um, so, and I'm going to document it just because if I was looking at this, I'd be like, okay, well, if I navigate away from the screen and come back, do I want to carry on where I am, where I was from? Like um, if I click on, uh, um, the wizard again, and then click on a requirement, should I see the tasks that were previously there? And that isn't implied here. Um, Understanding the feature involves a conversation is maybe the key takeaway. There's too much to a large feature to get everything into a paragraph. Hey, Phil Schammel, how you doing? And yeah, I mean, this this product is clearly driven by me suffering something as to what you're saying. Um, and allowing product teams to write down their thoughts and what they feel the system breaks down as without worrying about the technical boundaries of those things, and then allowing the developers to break down the technical boundaries so they can understand the actual progress of the work, I feel is a useful thing. And yeah, I get the no, don't become overly reliant upon the tools. And this essentially doesn't necessarily, you can replace this with a good conversation. With an effective conversation and continual communication, you can replace this. Um, so, you know, that is my goal. Um, Maybe this is overly complicated. Our product owners for sure aren't limited by any measly technical boundaries. Um, so anyway, well, I appreciate that, Doctor. I appreciate that sort of stuff is good and thought provoking. And I've read through so much of that stuff over the years. Again, I feel that sometimes it's worth reading back over things you think you knew. Now you've got a different perspective. Now you've got a different experience because it can change the way you approach something, or it might be like, that's what they meant. I've been misinterpreting it all this time. When adding a task for a given requirement, after reading it, I always want to post it everywhere. Then a day later, I'm glad I posted it almost nowhere. I get why we might want to work that way. I just think there's a lot of people out there that aren't as capable of working in that way. And I'm glad that the authors of those things have got the chance to work in teams that can function effectively that way. But maybe it's something we have to fundamentally change at the education level. The way we work, the way we collaborate, the way we, you know, Alvi, thank you very much for the follow. Welcome in. Yeah, if you're new to the stream, you're more than welcome to ask any questions. If you have thoughts or opinions on what I'm doing, yeah, more than welcome. When I get a task for a given requirement, include dialog in wizard page, update API to capture requirement, identifier. Right. So again, that would be a piece of work unto itself. We could also publish update view with requirement task. The publishing of the task will now include the requirement identifier from which it came. Update view receiver to pass requirement identifier. Update task to contain the source identifier. Update graph QL to allow pulling associate. I'm gonna read that in a second. 1 second. Ludzi. Update GraphQL to view to associate requirement from task. So again, this one requirement seems simple, but to be able to really say this is done, we have to be able to know that it's going to be viewable again. So again, we return to wizard. We'd have to ask that question. Should we be able to navigate away and come back and resume the process? And the answer is yes. I'm in a situation at work where I've been working as a Java developer for about 7 years across various corporations. Each company I've worked in the Scrum methodology with sprints. I've noticed a recurring pattern in my current job. It's the same. Managers use sprints as a tool for excessive control and apply pressure to deliver everything within the sprint. They often talk about deadlines and due dates. The atmosphere is such that I always feel behind and I'm not like doing it, and I'm not doing enough. I struggle working under pressure in sprints. Because of this, I'm considering changing to a position where I wouldn't have to work in sprints. What advice could you give? So a lot of organizations latch on, and one line, enjoy coffee. A lot of organizations try to adapt to using Scrum and Agile, and they fail, but they still refer to it as Scrum and Agile. So you end up with a lot of people who dislike Scrum and Agile because they've used it as an excuse. So it's not just your organization; it is all over the place. I do believe that the developers should own the work, and managers should not be dictating how much work you get to do and what fits in a sprint. And the developers should be able to take that and break it down. Oftentimes, I've found that it's because of the software not being able to be adapted that causes the most problems, because it means that estimations are never accurate. You're not guaranteed, even if you change positions, you're not really guaranteed that another organization isn't going to say, "Oh, we're agile and we work in Scrum and you know, or we want to move towards that." And then, because the alternative is normally the same thing, just not labeled, right? You've got waterfall, which is what it becomes, because they just see it as like, oh, let's pass the work on, pass the work on, pass the work on. Oh, we need this done by Tuesday. And realistically, this process should empower the developers to be being more accurate. And it's again, I'm not trying to sell my own wares here, but the reason I'm doing this is because I feel that there's that disconnect between what management expects and what developers uh, think about, and trying to, from both perspectives, identify those holes, so that we can be clearer and be more transparent about what we can actually get done and the difficulties and challenges involved in that. Um, I would say that you need to make sure. I don't know what sort of role you have, um, within like whatever. I mean, 7 years you've been a developer for quite a while. You've got some experience, and um, you know, I think having the conversation about, look, it's not just about you give us work, we get it done in 2 weeks. It's about you give us work, we tell you whether we can do that work in 2 weeks, and you make compromises. That's what that's meant to be about, right? So maybe you can have that conversation and say, look, this isn't working. We keep missing things. We keep, because eventually, whether you like it or not, quality will suffer. Your times will get worse. Your code will get worse because you're trying to achieve these deadlines. It's not healthy for the overall long-term vision of the organization. So taking a bit of time to do more accurate planning, making sure as developers you're as clear as to what the requirements are and what you need to do to change the software, and not just rushing things in. From our perspective as developers, we have a responsibility to future us. So taking the time to um, read the code before you plan, read the code and understand, oh, here's some major problems. We need to raise these, so that it goes into the planning and you can kind of allow for that. And one of the things we often do as developers is it's not hyperbole, but we tend to make bold claims without having anything to back it up. Um, Whether that's, we can't do this, the system's going to break, it's all going to be bad. We can't do this because this software is really bad. It'll take months. Or we're like, oh yeah, that'll take like 5 minutes because it sounds simple. Again, what I'm trying to highlight here is some of these sound relatively simple, but because they sound simple to a product manager, therefore it's just put a bar on a screen or just do this. So what I'm trying to do with this is build out those requirements from a technical perspective, so we can actually see, okay, well, the developers actually believe this includes this. And thank you for the follow, Lindsay. Um, so I would say, I would encourage you to try and have some honest conversations with your teams to say, look, we need to do better at preparing. We need to do better at planning. We need to be clearer about our requirements. If management is still pushing, then they get what they pay for, right? And that is a bunch of rush developers. Um, a friend of mine was in the interesting situation that in the morning, they reviewed the sprint and got slammed for being delayed. In the afternoon, they pushed back from the same person about too high estimates. Some odds you can never please. If it, providing and that's what I'm saying about um, hyperbole or inflation of estimates, etc. Don't inflate your estimates to be trying to give yourself time. If you're doing pointing and those points are being associated with time, you need to get rid of that. If you're being siloed, you need to get rid of that. It will create more challenges in the long term than it will solve. trying to get um no worries. Trying to get uh better at estimating and being accurate with your estimations is useful. Because it means that you'll be taken more seriously when you give a large estimate. It will be, oh, why is that large? Let's dig more into that, and you can explain it, not just like I don't. I hate the. Well, I feel that we're gonna hit this issue. No, you can't be doing that because you might not hit that issue. So, and product isn't going to see that. You can't be dealing with what ifs at the planning phase. You can't be dealing with that at the sizing. As a developer, it's your responsibility to understand what the code's doing and what the expected changes are and ask the right questions. Um, absolutely. You shouldn't estimate time. You shouldn't. You should never estimate time. You'll be wrong 9 times out of 10. Or you'll give too wide a range and you'll finish it quickly and yeah. I think part of the art is how to answer questions. Part of the art is building that shared respect. Is they respect you, respect their ability to gather the information you need, and they respect your ability to take what they give you, ask the right questions, and come out with a reasonable estimate. And sometimes you'll be way off, sometimes you'll be way under, but it all wash out. But it's a shared trust and working as a team from product to developer, not product and developer. Right. Um, you're not independent teams. Yeah, trust. I'm not sure estimation is the right thing to be focused on. Maybe current blockers would be better. Estimation is so if you're I believe that if your managers like to go back to Lodzie's quotes, right? Managers use sprints as a tool for excessive control and apply pressure to deliver everything within the sprint. So managers are basically dumping a load of work in there and expecting it done within 2 weeks under the label of Agile or Scrum. Realistically, estimation of that work needs to be done effectively. So questions need to be asked, pushback needs to happen. The estimation process needs to be telling them, we can't do that in 2 weeks, right? If they're expecting you to work as many hours as possible to finish that, then you're not actually doing Agile or Scrum. You're doing horrible waterfall with managers that don't know how to manage. Um, Current blockers, I'm not sure how current blockers necessarily come into um, that flow. Using Agile as an absolute rather than a starting point is misguided, which you've learned through experience and seeing the challenges that it poses when we say, hey, we're Agile. And again, it's oftentimes a claim. Return to wizard. If I navigate away from the screen, um, Delta, have a great day. Thank you very much, as always. And I'm going to read through that article a bit more later. I kind of skimmed through it and got the gist from what you were saying, but I'm going to read through it again. I need to spend some time on reading soon. Mm. So thank you for providing that. Appreciate it. Should be able to resume the wizard. So this is again, as you're going through this with your product team, it's on you as a developer, on you as a QA, on you as a UI UX person, whatever role you're playing in the team, to make sure you're asking questions, even if it seems really kind of, oh, duh, yeah. Trust, QA, yeah. Um, we like spending more money, do we? And calling it saving money. Um, devs can test. Devs are terrible testers. Um, I was going to say something then. Oh, pants. Yeah, devs cannot test. Devs are terrible testers. But yeah, asking a question, making sure it's explicit. This is a requirement, right? So this might not be, this might not yield a task, right? Because it might be something I handle in this task, right? But it's explicitly stated that it can be done. And I honestly think that QA will be using this as kind of the acceptance of the actual planning item. Because this is essentially a story. With the idea that it doesn't have to be an actual story. It could be bigger than a story. Um, when we get to the tasks, maybe we get into a world of being able to QA actual tasks. Maybe there is something there. We can talk about that as we go. So we know the individual components are QA'd and then the overall process is QA'd. Um, but again, this is the way the product is thinking about it. So creating task requirements in the wizard screen, when I click on a requirement, a button should enable me to add a task for that requirement. So here we have, right now they're just going out in the date order. Um, update view receiver to pass. So this is updating the view. So this is adding the task for the requirement. This is updating the view. So this now implies that I did the publishing. Right. I missed that out because I wasn't sure where I was going to put that. So ultimately, it would be on me to do this to say, oh well, don't forget you also need to publish the requirement as part of the task now. So that needs to be changed because then this would receive it. So here we're going to update the view receiver. We're going to update the task to contain the source requirement. So now we have an update story. So there's more involved there. We have update GraphQL. So now we need to change the actual data store. We need to change this. We need to change that. So again, this is a piece of work, but it all kind of sits underneath here, right? So this is where I get stuck when we do just a story and we don't task it out. Um, so yeah, sorry. Um, sorry. Um, let's get to this. So basically what I've just done is I've captured the view piece, I've captured the add piece. So realistically, I've covered the ability to return because you might assume because you can store it, you could actually get away from this and not do that view component, and it would work while you're in the screen because it would be using the local store. But the moment you move away and come back, it'll be lost. So that's going to be an ongoing challenge that I'm going to have to figure out a good pattern for on the client side. Is okay, well, I know that there's data pending. I have some of the data, but I don't have all the data. How do I indicate to the user that it's not loaded yet? And how do I update the client when it is loaded without telling the user, oh, now go make a request. Now we'll go make a request. Now we'll go make a request, etc. So I need to figure out that whole subscription concept from the server side. I should be able to see the title of the planning item that the task is associated with. So this is a requirement from the other side. So now this is, well, now the requirement title has to come in here somewhere, and the planning item needs to come in here. So when I click on this task, I know that it's associated with the planning item and a requirement, and maybe I can expand that or maybe whatever. So it has a source essentially. So a requirement will get me to a planning item, so I can get that. Now, the beauty of the system here is, because of the way this is built, I can, again, if you haven't seen this before, the way this application is built is the client sends commands up through APIs. These APIs are broken down into their relative components. So planning and requirements live in the planning component. Tasks live in the task component. So when I create a new planning item, it goes here. When I create a requirement, it goes here. When I create a task and associate it with a requirement, it's just going to have an ID. It doesn't have any association there. I publish the events to Kafka and tie them all up into this view right now. And this GraphQL API sits on top of that view and allows me to query it. So I can still combine all that information and pull that information down in the GraphQL API, even though these stores are actually separate up here. So that is the way that's working. And if you've not been in the stream before, this is a diagram you'll see a lot of. It's the clearest representation of the way the system's kind of working. Okay. So I know I haven't done any actual code today, but this is a useful process to make sure that I'm stopping and asking the questions at the right time. So let's go. Let's actually, no, let's not mess around. Let's not be adding things that are not done yet. Provide planning item PI requirement detail in task detail. When viewing task detail, pull the PI, the source PI requirement info into view. So that's update GraphQL. So we might not actually need to update GraphQL there because we might actually have that navigation. By virtue of doing the previous piece where we go and say, okay, well, we can now from a task get. Oh, we didn't do it that way, did we? Add task requirement. How to associate requirement from task. So this view piece here isn't actually. That's not actually the piece I care about. I care about the requirement being able to get its associated tasks. So for when I click on a requirement, I should be at the task should be added on the screen as part of a list. So what I'm saying there is when I click on a requirement in the wizard screen, I should see the list of tasks associated with it. I don't have any endpoint for that. So that's the task I'm talking about. This actually solves the other problem. That solves this one, not that one. So task, add task. Not focused on the workflow here right this second. I understand that it's kind of, I'm jumping back and forth, but that's fine. We need to view fetch tasks for requirement GraphQL endpoint for fetching tasks associated requirement too heavy to pull all tasks associated with requirements. So again, the question there is, do we make it so that when you pull the requirement, you can actually ask for the requirement tasks as well? Or do we just say, so again, loading it all up into the client, so you'd actually end up with planning item requirements tasks. So if you loaded that data once, it would be loaded next time as well. My problem with that is I'm always going back to the server right a second, so there's no real, I'm not actually benefiting very much other than storing a lot in the memory of the client. Which again, I'm starting to question the value of, I suppose. Yeah, there's our extra task. There you go. So the reason, again, the reason that's slow is because that actually has to go through here, go here, go here, go here. Now it's available to me, right? So that's why that's slower. I'm also not using the local store for this. I'm actually determining the load of this based upon this server request. So there's a bit going on there that I probably should make more efficient. So basically those two tasks are associated with this one requirement. The other task is associated with this. This is implicit now. Well, is it implicit? I believe so, but it should be defined as a requirement. And again, that's a useful step, right? This conversation, to Dota's point of this 3 Cs, right? The card, the conversation, and the whatever the other C was. Um, um, this entire thing is driven, is built to drive that conversation. It's to make sure that the planning, the product manager isn't. We'll go to the full version. Oh, interesting. That's not loading. Nice. The product manager isn't trying to define the technical things. They're trying to define the things that they expect to see, the things they want to do. And rather than just putting them as a bullet pointed list in the description, I'm actually asking them to build out these things. Now, again, they're not focused on generating those stories at this point, right? They're focused on generating what they believe are independent components that are verifiable to them. If they happen to align with a single task, it's fine. It's fine. That is okay. Um, Good day, Thindle. How you doing? Welcome in. So if they happen to align with a single task, awesome. It's 1-to-1. Great. You can go off and plan that way, and we'll probably make it so you can actually say, um, uh, actually, let's do it. Let's do it now. If the task is exactly same as the requirement, should be able to click a button and populate the title and description from the requirement. Right? The irony. To update that, and again, the developers, the product management could break these down independently. They could do this, and I've seen more of this than I have breaking them down independently. Thank you once again, one line. Things are good. Things are good. We're starting to get the tasks built out. So we have the ability to add the task now. And what I'm talking about today is taking these requirements and building the tasks from them and creating the wizard that will allow us to take these and generate these. So again, task here. Question. If I did that, if I said that the requirement is the task, because for this particular case, I mean, this one it actually did work out. That is one thing, right? Now, the technical requirements of that task aren't actually the same as the requirement itself, I suppose. But if we wanted to support that, no, you know what? We're not doing that. We're not doing that for right this second. We're gonna dig deeper on that requirement. We're gonna see what happens once we start building these things out, and once people start to get their hands on the software, and see how you feel about that. Because I think these requirements will rarely be aligned to the actual technical expectations. Um, and you have the requirement to refer back to. So if you want to write same as requirement, then you can write same as requirement, but the requirement should not be carrying the technical details. It should be carrying the expected the expected functional details, not the non-functional requirements. Yeah. And that phrasing drives me crazy because the functional part is the code, but we're referring to it as non-functional requirements. So we're starting to get there, right? So let's move towards getting something done. So we're going to say this is ready. We've had a chat, we've discussed, we've said, okay, we need a new screen because it's going to be a process. We're going to need to be able to create tasks when we click on a requirement. We should be able to then, when we go back to the requirements, the tasks, we should be able to see the listed planning item and requirement. And also, if we navigate away, we should be able to continue this process. Now, again, I'm no UI expert, so I haven't been putting any UI expectations in here. I should be able to navigate to a screen. Where from? How? Where? What? What am I doing here? So I think at this point, slithers in like a snake or moving his body left to right. After finding out that people could see him, he stops doing it and rolls sideways further until accidentally bumping into a dog. Start to call a dog lesson, TBD. Hi, Canny. How you doing? How's things? So I am starting to believe that we probably need a menu for right this second. I have no idea how to lay out this bar, how to put the functions in there. These are useful. All good, Kenny. All good. Um, where would I put, where's the most logical place that you would want to do this? Promote. So this is now, I suppose we're ready for planning. So we're having the conversation. So we should have transitioned this to ready for planning first, right? So this is now, hey, developers, let's go talk. Let's go build the requirements. Okay, we've added the tasks for these requirements. Are we good? Do we think we need anything else? Well, where are we going to put the button? Oh, where are we going to do this? Progress, yeah. So last couple of days we've made good solid progress. We have now a different view, so you can go between planning and tasks. And the tasks, this is the backlog essentially, um, of actual work we've said needs to be done. Um, and kind of figuring out this now process to say, okay, these requirements going to create these things. So things are moving along. Requirements, task reports. So again, part of why I repeat myself a lot on this stuff is because it's also good to keep confirming with myself that things are working the way I expect, and to say it out loud helps. So I apologize if I'm very repetitive in this respect, but the product is defined by expectations of the product team, of the management, etc. The actual technical requirements of those things are defined differently and break down, and oftentimes we end up trying to fit them inside a story because it fits with what product think. So the tasks are what we would normally refer to as stories in Jira. These would be tasks, and you can go in here and see the actual technical requirements. Like, we can document what we want in here. Ultimately, this will be more rich like this with comments, etc., etc. But I'm not focused on that part right this second. Um, so this is what the developers would work on. Now, I probably want to show the planning item title in here or something. But yeah. So what the piece we're working on, Radio Patrick, hello, how you doing? Uh, I saw in Sato's stream yesterday that you said you had some good news. Which sounded exciting. I lurk a lot in Sato's stream these days. um, so yeah, so the idea of being and this kind of nice, nice. Well, absolute best of luck with that one. That's awesome. Um, so kind of the reason I'm going into this is the reports part. So the requirements tasks. So the tasks get created. These are the actual tasks, and the reporting component of this is being able to see on the planning item current progress. And it brought up the fact that, and this reminded me that a product manager might write this sort of story, but there's a technical underpinning here that we don't have yet. And if we get into the technical story aspect, well, we need to figure out how that's driven and stuff. So there's all sorts of other things there. But ultimately the goal would be to show, this has one task and it's not done. This has three tasks and two of them are done, etc. So, and this would somewhere up here indicate the overall progress. So that's the reporting aspect. Again, allowing the people who care about things the ability to see what they care about, and the people who care about doing the work, getting the work done. So keeping it clean. Um, bu- 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 let's uh let's talk one more minute about this and then see if we'll get the screen in at least today. So this seems to be my action panel. Do I just make it a menu? Or do I do something different there? I mean, it doesn't really matter, but it's kind of like, do I add a button down here? Do I add an action up here? Like create tasks, or do I do it for each one? Like show the button and say create tasks? Am I thinking of this too grand? I think I might be. The principles of what I've cast out are valid. How I implement them in the UI is actually the thing I think might actually be different. I think creating the tasks, like creating a planning wizard screen, might be a bit too excessive. I think generating the tasks. The dog's got hiccups in this side of my foot. Um, I've always generally liked adding function buttons at the top of areas, even if there's a subset of action buttons too. Like if I was going to do the full wizard, this might be the place to put this. But now I'm questioning from a workflow perspective, is it quicker and smoother to say generate tasks from here and generate tasks off a given requirement? Is that more of a logical thing? Because then you can continue on generating tasks afterwards in a much quicker way. There's no actual navigation to another screen. Napalm, good morning. You're early today. With the exception of submit, cancel, or validation buttons. So, ideas, new, create new drawing. So, guess I was moving faster this morning than usual. Keeping actions in the screen and reducing navigation is the way to go. Yeah, so my initial thought was basically create a screen that looks like this, has the requirements down one side, and then gives you a work area over here. And so you kind of get requirement A, requirement B, then you click on that one, and then you can add tasks, 1, 2, etc., 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 and keep adding them. And then you click on this one and navigate to that one. But that's an entire new screen with a whole lot of behavior that I don't think helps the workflow. Because if you sat down with the developers and you're tasking this out, then the likelihood is you're looking at this and saying, okay, let's task it. So you create it. Maybe it's a dialogue that you say, okay, add, 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 add. Or you just say add a task, add a task, add a task, and it pops up similar to that dialogue. It just has a source requirement identifier attached to it. So I don't think we need a wizard screen. So the workflow, instead of being an entire new screen, would be basically what we have now. We have the requirements here. We'd say, okay, dialog, right? And then it just, that's it. Yeah, that's a much cleaner workflow, isn't it? And much more realistic. No total navigation. If we're going back and forth between requirements, if we're going back and forth between planning items, we just navigate and we can come back and we don't have to go to an entire different UI layout, etc. So yeah, let's remove that. No wizard screen. That means we don't have to worry about returning to the wizard. Create tasks in the wizard screen. So this is in the planning item list. I should see a add task button. Um, what defaults think of the new C# feature targeted type new? Which feature? C# 9, C# 13.9. Oh, you mean um, you mean when you do this that way? I don't think that's actually older than that. Yeah, that's been around for a few versions. There's some variations of that now. C#9, that's been around since. Yeah, that's been around since C#9. Yeah, have you updated your framework version or something, or ReSharp has got some new refactorings? Um, I don't use it often in this, like in this case, I prefer var. I know there's some people that prefer that. Um, Weirdos. Um, yeah, same here. I do work the same way. I get a lot of suggestions and decide whether I like them or not. Um, I like it in dictionaries and lists more than I do uh, in particular types like that, just because it saves the amount of stuff to the right, even if you uh, I like it. It's less typing. That's my way to detect the type. Method returns priority type. Yeah. So I use it interchangeably and high quality. How you doing? Yeah, that seems to be where it comes up. Well, yeah, lists and dictionaries. Yeah. Because normally those you're defining, you might actually have them as a private declaration somewhere, and then you're defining them somewhere in the code. And it just saves on a lot of typing. Yeah, I use it interchangeably. Um, there's actually, I think there's a C sharp 12 or proposed, C sharp 13 feature that looked, and you never know what's in these feature sets these days because they they scrap a lot of what they're working on. The params collections, so they've expanded the use of params. You can use different types. Any recognized collection type now. The new lock object. Um, they've actually created a lock. Um, implicit index. What? I'm not sure. See, that's the sort of thing. That's the sort of example where I'm not sure I've ever used anything that's had that need. Um, ref and unsafe and iterators and async methods. Async ref. Okay. Async methods can declare ref local variables or local variables of a ref struct. Allow ref struct. Again, not sure I've used much. I haven't used much in the ways of structs. Overload resolution priority. So nothing in C sharp 13 looks particularly life changing for me now. They got rid of the extension types. It's all good. That might have some, the params on collections. Escape character, again, don't use a lot of lock objects. Not really something I need to panic about right now. I'm using semaphores for acquire, but that needs to change out to a more distributed lock anyway. As we build out, and this syntax, I just don't know anywhere where I've ever thought, oh, you know what, I need to change the third element from the end of an array. To me, that seems like a hard coding nightmare. But oh well. I need more numbers on the screen. Yeah, it just seems like well, like maybe well, yeah. I don't often, I'm not like, oh, I'll change the sixth element from the end and the fourth element, and then oh no, the ninth element from the end needs to change. Yeah, that's what I was kind of saying. It doesn't really do the job, does it? As far as demonstrating the actual real purpose of that, because you know there's probably a framework reason that's in there. Um, I believe that a lot of features are driven off framework requirements over user requirements. That's interesting. It chose not to put that message in the chat. Huh. Okay, so we're going to change this. We're going to, and by the way, these tasks don't actually change. These tasks are still valid because they do adding a task for a requirement, updating the view, fetching the task. These all matter. I agree. It feels like something they wanted for probably a very good but esoteric reasons to give it to us. Yeah. Yep. So we're gonna do it. We're gonna be able to add a task from a requirement, right? Now the interesting fact here is to do this effectively. In the planning item requirements list, I'll come back on that thought in a second. I should see an add task button. An add task button, not at. I should be able to add a title, and I am doing great at this English language thing today. A description to the task. I click add. Um, when I click it, I should see a dialog. Adding a task. This brings up some technical design challenges in the code anyway. Adding a task. I should be able to add a title and a description to the task. When I save, dialog should close. So we're getting to testable. Can I do that? Well, I could do that and it would fail, and this test would pass, right? This one is from the task perspective anyway. I should be able to see the list of the title. So I could validate that the task was added and it has the requirement, right? So I can't test this independent. I can test that this closes, but then to validate the entire thing, I have to do this. So what I'm not gonna, what I was tempted to do is say, oh, and a number will display here, but that number right now is no value. There's no actual benefit to that number because we're going to turn around and do the progress stuff. So the title of this is wrong. It's create tasks for requirements for plotting item, right? That's the actual title. And again, in the interest of keeping it in the workflow, we just add a button here. So let's create a new branch. Check out new branch, feature, ask from requirements. There's all sorts of stuff that I'm like, I need this, I need this. What could I do here? How do I do this? There's all sorts of pieces that I'm considering how to work on this. So we're gonna see if we can get this button in the screen before we call the stream today. And again, if you have a workflow and or you have questions about what I'm doing here, please ask. I'd be interested to see if this workflow that I'm going through right now is actually familiar. Or you can see there's a major downside to it, or I'm open for discussion on this piece. Well, I'm open for discussion on the entire thing because it's meant to be discussion generating. The goal here is to say, okay, well, the planning items created, the tasks are, we need to create the tasks for the planning item. So based off these requirements, we want to be able to add a task and do that. The irony is the test is going to be against, I've created the tasks already for the things I want to test. So first challenge, I have a dialog for adding a task It's in the task component, in the tasks module. If I reference this task, then I will load that entire module. So do I have a problem? Do I introduce a performance issue with Angular there? I'm not certain. So is task now standalone? So if add task becomes standalone, my task store becomes shared. I don't see any way around that. I think the only real way of saying that is, well, it is shared because I need to be able to add a task from multiple places. Is the dialogue different, right? In this case, I don't need a requirement. Do I create a task dialogue in here? But then I have another need for the store. So the store becomes shared anyway. The thing I love about this is I started the stream saying this. The one thing this is kind of opening my eyes to is just how quickly the possibilities, the requirements can spiral out and the challenges it faces for the software and the vision of the software. I have to keep checking, am I staying on task as such? I didn't mean to make that word task, but am I staying on as far as, is this application doing what I thought it would do when I first started? Is it realizing the things that I wanted it to realize? And if I was building this out as a product right now, i.e., I actually had employees and there was customers of this product right this second. I mean, right now it's pretty useless, so that's not likely. But if it was, how quickly would I lose control of the vision? How quickly would code get jammed in there? Would problems rise? And it wouldn't necessarily be the problem of the developers. It would be the fact that the customers are asking for requirements. The customers are asking for new features. And we're trying to please the customer base at the same time as trying to validate that this is the vision that I set it out to be. And at every turn, I'm presented with another possible compromise, and another possible compromise, and another possible compromise, right? Challenges of, when do I do data transformations? When do I do tooling? When do I do certain features? When do I do alerting? When do I do changes? What focus do I put on changes? What do I need on reporting? There's all manner of things, and every single feature I add adds about a dozen possible other features that should or could be done to make the application more useful. And if I'm dreaming them up and I put them in front of you as a developer, or you as a product manager, or you as a UI UX, or you as an owner, how fast are those features going to accelerate those demands? So the reason I drifted off onto that thought pattern again was here. I have a decision to make right this second as to how to effectively lay this component out. And I can make arguments for many different ways. If I take this dialogue and I copy it into here, what is the benefit? The benefit is that I end up with a specific version of the task. If I take this dialogue and move it out to shared, what does tasks have as a, I mean, tasks still has a view, right? But this single decision could cause challenges in the development later on. It could cause a pattern to appear. And you have to consider that. If you're building software with others, an action that you take to think, am I being pragmatic or am I being in the name of getting the feature there, or am I actually considering the effect on the software? If I copy and paste it, another developer might come along and say, oh, well, we need this component in this screen. Oh, let's just copy and paste the component because that's what was done here. And you've started a cascading pattern of it might be the right answer in this situation, but not the other one. So again, conversation, discussion between groups within the team, planning and development are not teams, they are a team. And the product only comes together well when everyone's aware of that fact. So let's get our button in before we end the stream. To do this, I'm going to share this component and I'm going to move this store out. Right? So this becomes there. This and this we'll worry about in a second. And also a quick shout out before we get too far. Yeah. Can encourage Mojo to stream more. It's a nice chill place to go and be if you haven't been in there before. And he's all about the learning and the growth. So he just needs to come up with a schedule. That's a challenge for streaming. A schedule is always a challenge. Okay, so let's move that there because now task service has to be shared because every component I have has to be shared. Let's move our response. Request. We didn't do that yet, so let's move state. Let's move our model. And I'm okay with this so far. Maybe I won't be in the long term, but we'll see. Da, 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 da. Components, add task. So this now becomes standalone. Right? This now needs to import that, import that, import that. So now these should be imported in here. So the standalone component works. We'll organize them later. So as far as stores go, features, states, okay, so we can get rid of them and them. We can remove that task component. That's fine. Okay, so now add task. So it did do a pretty good job of moving everything around. So now they're all shared. So this should almost be working again. Task detail component. It's fine. shared models task is fulfilled. Task store from shared. So our store. There we go, that's why. So let's fix our that. What's that? Export star from tasks. Export star from request status feature. That's just to try and tidy these up. So we can do that and that, 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 that. Remove that. There you go. Cannot find taskless response. It's because the taskless response has no. Oh, let's go to models. Let's fix that. Export star from task. Notification project user. What's that? Task.service. Again, same problem. That's that. And I don't think this is bad. I don't think I'm doing anything particularly horrendous here. I think sharing the component, it is a component that needs to be shared. And that's loading again. So now the store's working, everything's good. And all that, so we can finish up on going here. Go to the planning module. And components. The planning item detail as the requirements. Requirements now needs to have a button. So in here we need to add we need to import that component. I don't think this is standalone. Yeah, this is fine. So this module now will have the add task from the shared library. And now we can span do that. And this will be add task. Add task. This is a bad thing to do, by the way, because this key down thing. If I use the tab key to go over the keys, it will actually pop up the dialog. So that's not a good thing to do. It just complains at me, and I don't like the yellow squiggle. We're going to remove this for right this second just to prove this is working. Loki. Nobody. Nobody. Okay, okay. You coming up to say hello? Hello, buddy. Hello. Hello. You okay? Whoop. Don't break your blinking legs. Do you want to come up? Is that what you want? Hello, bud. Hello. Ah. Hello. Hello, pal. You okay? Stream needs more of this. It's better than the coding, right? All that waffling. It's more dog. Hello, bud. You okay? You okay? You can say hello? Yeah? You want to say hello? Is that what we want? Um, okay. Oh, dear. You're a funny little man. You're a funny little man. Oh, that's my glasses. Hello, bud. Okay. You gonna sit there for a second? Okay. Um, so all that should yield. You should have another pencil. I'm going to click it. We get the add task dialog. Um, hello, pal. Okay, so I've got some styling issues there. I wonder why. That's probably because that's not including some of the library stuff. But ultimately, that's what we'll do. So we'll do this tomorrow. We'll finish this up, get the add task working. He's laying on my left arm now, so this makes typing incredibly difficult. But yeah, I think this is productive because it means that we've gone through, we've identified a use case. I had one vision in my head, and after discussing that, the workflow and stuff, we've refined those requirements. We've defined that we should be able to add a task. When we create that, it should. I'm not going to do it now because it's not going to have value, but it should then have an associated requirement with it, and then we can get to the rest of these things and figure out. What's my headphones, bud? You know, don't lick the headphones. We should be able to go through this process, and I think that's a much smoother workflow. And then, so by tomorrow, we should be able to add requirements, add tasks for requirements, and then be able to get to the seeing the progress of those. So we'll get into that tomorrow a bit more. But are you going to let me? Okay, you lay there for a second. Yeah. Hello, bud. Hello. Andreas is doing fast endpoints, so we could go over to Andreas. Tick's gone back to Minecraft mod rather than that. Um, yeah, I mean, Andreas is pretty much doing the thing that is closest to what we're doing, so I'm going to go raid Andreas again. So, productive day. As always, if you're interested, if you want to talk more about this sort of stuff, don't forget there is a Discord. I'm always open to discussions on workflows, on Agile, on Scrum. These practices are stuff that we don't practice very well. And again, this tool is really about giving the developers what they need at the same time as giving product and planning what they need. So don't forget, it is Wednesday. So later on, we do have a one-line stream. One-line streams more .NET development, some Blazor, and it's currently figuring out what comes next after the financial management project. But yeah, more of that. We're going to be in Loki. They're saying bye-bye to you as well. Huh? Okay. Let's go raid Andreas. So thank you very much. Take care. Have a great rest of your day. Yep. You too. Bye all.